Bottom line, are you in or are you out?
What are you talking? In or out of what?
No time for questions, just action. In or out.
Okay, well then I'm out.
I'm sorry, Jet. Actually, you're already in.
Okay, then why would you ask me?
Because I thought you would go, I'm in, Bob, and we would have had a really cool moment, but you kind of ruined the whole thing.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Mid-Tier Thoughts. So today we're doing a little bit different of a video. Today I'm kind of going over some of my more unique or weird guns. These are just guns that either have a cool story on how I got them or a cool backstory with that, or I just think they're fun and neat. I haven't put them into a video yet. Some of these I have, but most of these I've kind of struggled on a way to put them into their own video. So I kind of just want to show off some of the stuff you guys haven't seen and kind of see what you think. So let's dive into it. So starting off with kind of the more mundane, we're going to go over here to this guy. This guy, for those of you who haven't followed the channel yet or haven't seen this yet, this Abomination is what I like to call the heroin hamster. So this guy, I remember a few years back, the honey badger was super big, and then they came out with the sugar weasel, which was kind of the dumbed down version of the honey badger. And so the 8.5-inch 300 Blackout was like the bee's knees. So I threw one together off of a PSA kit. I slapped on, this is a Vortex, one of their, I think it's like the Venom, one of their red dots on here on a riser. I've got my Yankee Hill adapter on here for running a can on it, the nice bright orange magazine. So with these, with this one, it's nothing fancy. It's just a cheap PSA 8.5-inch 300 Blackout. The funny thing about this, though, is I had the wild hair to do a Miami Tiger Stripe, which, as you can see, is not at all what came out with this. So I sat down to paint this one night, and I started off with a hot pink. I was going to go over blue, like Tiger Stripes kind of thing. I had some orange accents. And I didn't like it, so I just kept repainting it. I just kept repainting it, and I just kept repainting it. Next thing you know, I'm 8 coats of paint deep, and here we are. So with this guy, this one again, the heroin hamster, I do have a video on this. I'll throw in a Blackout versus 9mm for PCCs. This one's just a unique, fun one to me because now I just kind of embrace it. This is kind of a Galaxy unicorn fart, and I love it. So this thing, it works really well. I haven't had really too many issues with it, but altogether, I love this thing. It's ugly in all the right ways. Also, if you guys hear any giggling, my son, he's 9. He wanted to go ahead and be in the video this time, so he wanted to run the camera. So he's behind me on the camera. So if you hear anybody laughing hysterically, it's probably him behind me. It's a family affair here. So going on to my, again, kind of getting the mundane stuff out of the way before we get to some of the cooler stuff. This here is my CZ Scorpion. This is the Evo. So this guy here, I've just got a Trijicon MRO up there, and then I've still got the sights on it. I've got a nightstick weapon light, if you can see that on there. So kind of goon taped to the side here with it. I've got their newer brace on here that I really dig. And then I've got the nice lighter spring on the trigger, so it's got a nice sweet trigger pull. This thing is super awesome in the sense that this was the first gun I put a suppressor on. I'm not sure if you can see it on here, but the suppressor is here, the Omega 9K. So it starts about here, comes on out. So this is subdued back in there in the rifle size this is the rifle size, the carbine size handguard inside of the CZ pistol. So this thing's pretty rad, 9mm. I'm a big fan of this. I've got a video again on that. You can check out that video of this versus that 300 Blackout up here somewhere. I'll have that posted. But this is just fun to me because it was like the first step into NFA items for me. This was kind of purpose-built, kind of purpose-bought from that way to be that first gun for me. It's the first gun I put a can on and kind of stepped me into that suppressor world. I really love this thing. It's super quiet, and it's just a blast to shoot. Overall, it's just a really fun gun. You get some definitely like Stormtrooper, Warhammer 40K vibes, I think, out of it with this suppressor on here, where you definitely get a different vibe to it. So all together, I love this thing. Quick ad break. If you guys like coffee and you want to support the channel, check out Blackout Coffee. They were awesome enough to sponsor this video. Check out the code that I've put in the description down below. For some awesome coffee, you get 20% off your first order. You can also help support the Second Amendment. They support you, support them, support us, and get a good cup of coffee while you're doing it. At the same time, check out 1791 Gun Leather Holsters for all of your awesome holster needs. We've got some cool stuff coming up from them here soon. So let's get back to the video. So coming in then around number 3 is a really cool gun that kind of has a cool story for me. So this here is the FN High Power. This is the new one from 2022. This thing is pretty rad. So this thing is an awesome gun all the way around, and it's definitely a reinvention of the classic. So it's not entirely the same as the classic. They did definitely modernize it for sure. The takedown is a lot simpler. Comes with 17 round magazines. the story behind this is that I worked at Sharpshooting Indoor Range and Gun Shop for about 5 or so years. With that, I've gone back there a couple times. I moved to Idaho, and the job I had here didn't quite work out. So in between jobs, I picked up some more hours back at the gun shop. The boss there, Jeremy, is super awesome. If you're in the Spokane, Coeur d'Alene area and you want to go check that place out, please do. They have an awesome indoor range. They're an awesome shop. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. They're just good people, and they deserve your money. So with that, when you work in the gun industry, a lot of companies have rewards programs. So basically the way that works is you sell enough of their stuff, you get something in return. So the most recent time I worked there, the gun that I wound up earning through the points was this gun here. So I actually basically just paid the sales tax amount on this and paid to have it transferred to me. And then this gun itself is totally rad. This thing is one of the smoothest triggers of a single action pistol I've ever shot in my life. This thing, I totally dig it. If you don't like this, you're probably a communist. So I definitely get some Axel Foley vibes out of this with Beverly Hills Cop. I absolutely love this thing. All right, so with this guy, I absolutely love this gun. We are going to be having a full review on this coming out soon as I get some more magazines for it. So that Sharpshooting Indoor Range and Gun Shop that is located in Spokane, Washington, and I moved just across the border to Idaho at the time. So this did come in. I had to transfer to an Idaho shop, but because of the legislation in Washington, it had to come in with the 10-round magazines, which is incredibly unfortunate. Tried contacting FN. Not much I can do about that. So with that, it does have the 10-round mags. These are just dimpled right there. That might take some constructive effort to potentially return them to what they should be, but we'll see. That might come in a future video. But with that, I do need to get some more magazines. They're like $60 a pop. That's really the only downside with this thing. So I'll be getting some more of those, and we'll be doing a full review of the high powers in the future. So the next two guns are also related to my time spent at that gun shop. Realistically, that was probably one of the funnest jobs I think I've ever had, just working behind a gun counter and doing some instruction stuff, whenever it comes into firearms. With that, I spent a lot of time there talking to customers, getting close to people, really just kind of learning what people like, learning people's stories. Like, these human interaction parts pretty dope, and got to spend a lot of time there. With that, you always see some weird stuff coming in because we would buy used guns too. So the next two guns are from some interesting interactions that I had at the gun shop, which is why they're on this list. So this first one here is definitely a futterized rifle. So this is a Savage Crackshot. Yeah, so this is a Savage Crackshot. This is a falling block, single shot, 22 caliber rifle here with an octagon barrel that someone has put on a cheap Tasco scope that is in kind of rough condition. Now this thing is ridiculous. It's super short, right? Super small. I can barely fit a hand under here. Definitely more of like what I like to think of as like a gallery gun. Like back in the day, they used to have little 22s you'd shoot like a 22 short from, and you could do like indoor shooting galleries, things like that, and just about anywhere in the US. So that's kind of what I get the vibe of this gun. I originally bought this as a gun for my son to shoot, and by the time I actually got it home for him to shoot, he's already outgrown it. But this was the first gun that I did have him shoot. I shot some 22 Calibris out of here, which barely left the barrel, just to get him used to shooting out of the gun. We shot pop cans with this, and the 22 Calibri, it basically just has a primer, no powder behind it. And it was just enough to barely leave the barrel. You could physically watch it enter one end of a pop can that was empty and not leave the other. So this thing's pretty wild when it comes to shooting those. Shooting number 22 out of it shoots just fine. The kind of cool thing for me is that this is the first gun that me and my son got to enjoy together. And I picked it up at the gun shop for like $30. Basically just enough to cover what we need to make money on it. It came in with a lot of guns, and it was one of those days where it was payday. I had a wild hair to buy something new, and this is what I took home. So this is just a fun little gun for me. I might have a 22 video coming out here soon where I just shoot a bunch of different 22s. This is definitely going to be on the list. I've also thought about potentially upgrading the glass at some point, but I don't know. It kind of fits the aesthetic, so we'll see. So this other one, again, from the gun shop, my time there. This one is pretty cool, and I'm pretty proud of this. So this one is my 7mm Mauser Remington rolling block. This one, I believe, so for this one out there, for you guys that are like super hardcore knowledgeable about this, I'm not super hardcore knowledgeable about this, but I believe this is like a 1910 model. So after the Civil War, they produced these, and they make them in a black powder cartridge. It's a cased cartridge, but it's black powder. They're really popular, widely available all over the United States. then they start massively exporting these. Like, this thing was basically the AR-15 of its day. Like, every country was running something very similar to this, if not this, in a variety of calibers. This was back in a time where every country was running something different as a different caliber, and they were widely popular. And part of the reason was the breech was, and again, for those historians out there, correct me if I'm wrong, but the breech was strong enough that it could handle transition from the black powder to the smokeless powder fairly well. Now, here's where the fun part comes with this. So I had a customer bring this in, and basically his grandfather passed away. He didn't want it anymore. The only thing was that the hammer and the breech here, as well as all of the internals, minus the trigger, were missing. So all of the back half here, completely gone. All of the back half here, completely gone. So I got basically the husk of a rifle with a trigger, basically just this receiver. And well, basically what I got was everything except for the parts that actually make it shoot. So we do all the paperwork and everything. He just gives me this as a gift. So this thing's a 7mm Mauser. But as I went down to go hunt down the parts for this, I learned a lot about these different rifles, trying to find the right parts that I need. Eventually found a guy down in Nevada. I'll try to post a picture of it if I can find him. He's like the guy for Remington rolling blocks. I can't remember his name, but he's like an elderly dude in Nevada that all he does is restore these and make new parts for them, or restore old parts for them. So I get the right parts kit, I put it together. That's when I start hitting the forums, because I can't find anything about this thing anywhere, right? So I hit the forums and I find out that 7mm Mauser as a cartridge was not standardized until after these were out of production. So super sketchy. And basically, the only thing I found on how to ensure that yours is in spec was to take a light load, a hand load of 7mm Mauser, load it, fire it, and see what happens. Shoot for the moon, right? And so my grandfather and I go to his house and we strap this thing into a gun sled, tie a string around the trigger, and basically fire this thing off like a cannon. We found the hottest load of 7mm Mauser we could at a standard gun shop. Loaded one round in here, pulled the trigger, saw what happened. No structural damage, no issues. Check it out. Do it 3 more times, and then I handed it to my cousin to shoot for the first time live. And sure enough, it works just fine. So we picked up some standard mil-spec, military surplus, 7mm Mauser, and this thing is a dream to shoot. It's super awesome. This thing's pretty sweet. It's kind of started me down the path of reloading as well. So this thing's just a really awesome, fun gun. I'm going to have a video on this coming out sometime in the future. I just haven't quite figured out how I want to work that in yet. But this thing altogether is one of my favorite guns, just kind of a little restoration project, and just all around a beautiful rifle, and kind of from that transition time between bolt actions and muzzle loaders, and just really interesting piece of history. So I'm a big fan of this. All right, and finally, we have the last one on my list. So this one, I am absolutely doing a video on this guy in the future. This thing's super rad. So this was actually a gift to me from my grandfather. So this, although it is basically is an M14, right? M1A, M14. You guys have probably picked up on that. What is unique about this is that this is not a Springfield, it's not a Fulton Armory. This is a Polytech M14. China. So this is a pre-banned Polytech. So to my understanding, basically Norinco, Polytech, and all of the Chinese weapons manufacturers produced these knockoff M14s as a way for plausible deniability when they would drop these off into countries that maybe they wanted to start some stuff around there on the low, and they wanted Americans to get blamed for getting their weapons. They'd make these, because whenever you see someone with an M14 on TV, you think they're supplied by the Americans, not the Chinese. So at least that's the backstory that I've officially heard. Now with that too, Norinco also got super busted back in the day for illegally supplying all kinds of small arms into the United States in the early 90s, and so they got banned from import. So with this though, the cool thing is from my understanding, these actually have, for the receiver, a much stronger receiver than the American receivers, from what I've read on them. The interesting thing though is that they usually say that the bolt is a softer metal from the earlier models, but later on they figured out the hardening process. And from what I've seen with this, and from my grandfather's experience with this since he bought it in the late 70s, early 80s, it's held up fairly well. So the only thing that I've modified on this from the way that he originally had it is I added this rail from A&M Machining, and then I added the scope and the rings. So outside of that, and this is just the primary arms 1 to 6 I have on here. So outside of that, everything else on here is the way it came. So it's been kind of an interesting thing. Like I'm super spun up on ARs and everything, not huge into M1As, and kind of learning about the platform and learning just some of the different things that are out there about it. It's been really fun and interesting. Plus, like, to continue to enjoy this rifle after my grandfather enjoyed it for years and years. I mean, I remember growing up shooting this thing with him. This is one of the rifles he taught me on how to shoot before I went to boot camp. And he wanted to make sure, I knew what I was doing. So took me out with this thing. And this is one of the rifles that he used whenever he was a corpsman in the Navy for a while, was stationed with the Marines. And just a lot of, well, at least not this rifle in particular, but similar style rifles, actual M14s. But just kind of a piece of history with him and something that gets to live on for my grandfather. He's still alive. He's just in his late 80s. And so it's interesting to just have this and experience it and to continue that kind of tradition and heritage with that. Some of the quirks with this rifle too is you'll see here the muzzle device is actually kind of a faux muzzle device. It doesn't actually have the holes in the compensator here or in the flash hider, and part of that had to do with import restrictions during both the assault weapons ban and the issues with the RICO as far as what was classified as an assault weapon. But together, this thing is super awesome. I really enjoyed this rifle, and it's also had me learn a huge appreciation for Randy Shugart, because this thing is a little heavy. Now, granted, I'm a dude who loves battle rifles. You guys have seen my G3 on the video before. If you haven't, the video's up here. But I'm probably going to do a video comparison of this versus the G3 on kind of how they hold up and which one's a better battle rifle. But this thing together, really sweet. I wouldn't say I'm in the camp of like the super fun guys who just like sing this thing's praises all day long that it's the best battle rifle ever made, but it's definitely an awesome gun for sure. And for me, it's just more of the history and getting to carry on something that was my grandfather's, who was a big influence in my life, especially in the gun space, and really just enjoy what he enjoyed and continue enjoying this, and hopefully have my son enjoy it in the future and his son and so on down the line. So with that, guys, I hope you had a good time. Just kind of showing off some of my different guns. I haven't really had a chance to show you guys off yet. Just kind of some of my quirkier stuff or more personal items that I've really enjoyed over the years. Some of these will have their own videos coming by. Some of them, I'm not entirely sure exactly how I'm going to do that yet. But if you guys want to see more of this stuff, let me know in the comments. Let me know if any of these you want to see specifically more on, and we will do our best to fulfill your wishes. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for your time, for your support. It's been awesome growing with you guys on YouTube. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one.
Like and subscribe to Mid-Tier Thoughts. Peace.
With that, guys, we'll see you on the next one.